and it will be going on. Okay, you're all very welcome to this student survey. What are we going to do with the data visualization event? We have David Round from iGraduate or Tribal, who's going to demonstrate what he has done with the data, with the student survey data to date. We have a few things where we will have some questions for you throughout the session, just to get your opinion on some of the dashboards and how they look. Would also really welcome your opinion on some of the things as you go along. So please use the chat, put your questions in there, and we'll put them to David at the end. But keep an eye on the chat. We do have a few questions where we'd really value your opinion on one or two of the dashboards. All right, David, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, and hello everybody. Yeah, my name's David Round. I'm a product owner at Tribal iGraduate. So part of my role is basically coming up and designing new reporting methodologies for our clients, obviously StudentSurvey.ie being one of them. So what we've got today is I'm going to run you through the design that we've got using Power BI to display student survey results within our application that's called InTouch. So a few of you may be aware of the existing reports within InTouch, and at the moment they use Tableau to produce and demonstrate your results for any given year. So we're looking to replace those with embedded Power BI dashboard and reports. So today what I've got is essentially it's built from a specification that was supplied by Siobhan, that I know was had input from lots of other people as well. So we've really tried to follow that as much as possible, but then use some ideas from colleagues at Dublin City University, and then we've had a few working groups as well to finesse it a little bit. So hopefully what I'm going to show you today is pretty close to where it's going to finish, but obviously this session is to get some more feedback from you guys. I've got some specific questions that will pop in the chat as we go along, but also, yeah, as Maura said, if you've got anything else that you'd like to add, we can pick them up at the end once I've been through shown you through the dashboard. So no further ado, let me share my screen. Can I get a nod or a yes? Then that's come through. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So first thing to bear in mind is it's almost a shell of a Power BI report. So although some of it works, a lot of it doesn't, because obviously it's going to take us quite a few months to actually hook this up to proper data and make it all work properly. The theme and the colouring may well change a bit. We're waiting for one of the graphic designers at Student Survey to help us out a little bit with the colouring and stuff. So take that with a bit of pinch of salt, but it won't be too far away, I hope. So what we have is a series of pages. The navigation for these pages may end up being on the left-hand side. It may end up being at the bottom of the screen. We're not quite sure on that one, but there will be somewhere where you can navigate through the pages really easily. But within the actual pages themselves, there is navigation, so you can click on something and it will take you to the next page where applicable. So what we have here is the home page. So I've called it Overview, which essentially is a way for the user for their institution to log into InTouch, and this is the first screen that they'll be presented with, which is effectively all of the 10 indicator scores for a given year, for the given years, scores over time. A brief description of each one. So you can see there, the scale's 0 to 60. At the moment, we're going from 2016 up to 2022. We could change what we're seeing there in the visualizations by clicking those. And then critically on this is there's a number of filters on this screen to enable you to see how the results change for each indicator, depending on the filters that you've changed. So you can select, which faculty level you want or which school level you want, the field of study, the course code, the age group, the domicile, etc., etc. So many different ways of breaking this data down, so that hopefully, no matter what the view that you want to get to is available to you. And the sort of methodology behind a lot of these screens is, rather than giving you a chart that does everything, lots of charts to show every single way of cutting the data, so a chart by school or a chart by mode of study, etc., etc. We've given you fewer charts, but with the ability for you to select how you want to break down the data using these filters at the top. There's little things in here like there's a little information button there which will tell you, you know, how the scores are created. To, you know, the 1 to 4 becomes a 60-point scale. There's total responses here for the current year, and there's a little link there which will take us to the demographics page, which I'll come to at the end. And then with each of the indicators here, if we click on any of the titles, it will take us to the indicator analysis page, which gives us a further breakdown of that indicator. And then once we get to that stage, we can then break that down further and look at the questions that make up that individual indicator. So first straw poll of the day is regarding these charts that we have on screen here. Is obviously at the moment I'm showing them as column charts, but there was a suggestion that also we could quite easily show these as line charts, which is effectively telling you the same thing. So I've basically mocked up a page as column charts and a page as line charts. So as a line chart, the page would look a little something like this. So exactly the same, but you've got line charts instead of column charts. So first question is, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a column chart or a line chart in this context? I should point out as well, this data is not accurate, it's not real, so don't pay too much attention to that. I don't think Learning Strategies is that bad compared to everybody else. So yeah, first question, if you could pop that in the chat, basically A for column charts or B for line charts, that would be appreciated, please. So that's the overview page. Moving on then, so if we click any of these indicator headings, it will take us to the next page, which is the indicator. So this one we're looking at higher order learning, but we can select any of the indicators along the top and that would change obviously the results accordingly. We've got the same filters along the top that you've just seen on the previous page. So again, you can cut this data any which way you like, really. And at the moment, we've got a selection there, which is the years, which affects these top two charts, which is year-on-year analysis. So the one on the left here, that is essentially your indicator average score by year, quite straightforward. It's the same chart that you've seen on the previous page. And then on the right here, we've got the ability to break down that average score per year by different views. So the one we've got here is program type. So we can see for each one what higher certificate is, what higher diploma is, etc., etc. So you've got the ability then, at the moment, I've only got program type hooked up, but you could select AC Unit 1, so you'd have a line for each faculty, or you could see it by gender or age group, etc. And then, of course, from there, you can select, okay, well, I just want to see the results for education for that, and it would change accordingly. So you've got their indicator averaged by score, but what we could also do is apply benchmarks to this chart as well. So we can start applying different national benchmarks that are available to see how you compare over time. And obviously the filters at the top would affect those benchmarks as well. Then moving down, we can see for a given year. So for this year, we've got 2022 selected, broken down again by any of these views that you wish. Ignore the blank, against benchmark. So you can see how you stack up for a given year against a selected benchmark group, and this filter would apply to this one as well, for a different cohort. You will notice that AC Unit 1 has disappeared from this view because obviously the data is not there to compare your education against education scores elsewhere, etc., because of the differences in structure. But we can compare against cohort, gender, age group, etc., etc. So those, again, so as I said earlier, it's really about fewer charts, but giving you the ability to filter them as you want to get to the data, get to the view that you want to see. And if we scroll down a little bit further, there's some links and supporting information at the bottom of the screen. So on the right here, we've got some text, which is all about what can you do with this information. So if I click on any of these, it'll bring up a little pop-up window. we'll play around the formatting, by the way. It will probably look a bit nicer than this. That gives you some explanatory text about how to explore the data. This has been supplied by Siobhan. There's bits on planning. There'll be the same for action and sharing the benefits. And as a side note, these do appear in an information page right at the end. So a bit easy to see on one page, but useful to have there if needed. There's also a link there to get to the demographics page, which, as I said earlier, we'll come to at the end. And then the next part of this really is analysing how these indicator scores are made up. So how do we get to the questions? Sorry, what are the scores for the individual questions that make up this indicator? And that takes us to the indicator analysis, the question analysis page. So I can click this link, or I could easily, select it down here as well. And this takes us to the question analysis page. And it's got a very similar look and feel to it. Again, you've got exactly the same filters at the top to filter this data as you wish. And as I said, we're looking at the question analysis now. So it would auto-populate which AC unit you've selected, which indicator name you've selected. And we can use these filters above to affect the charts below. So this is where we need to select a question that's applicable to higher order learning. So here are the questions applicable to higher order learning. And if we selected any of the other indicators across the top, obviously the questions would change accordingly. So this changes here. Instead of looking at an average score, we're now looking at the breakdown of responses. So for this one, it's a 4-point scale. So here we have the 4 different question answers that people can give. And again, we have this same ability to break down. So have a column for each of the things that come under, for this one, I've selected cohort. But again, you could select domicile, AC unit, and now have a column for each of the ones that make that up. And then you can apply the filters at the top to get some further detail. Then scrolling down a little bit further, then we want to, instead of having, that is essentially an internal view, breaking down by, pardon me, different groups, we can then look at it, the responses versus different benchmark groups. And we can select that using this filter here. So that's very much looking at the breakdown of individual responses. But then at the bottom of the screen, we can also look at what the average score is, or potentially the percentage of positive results. So we've got a little filter here, so we can change how these charts would look. So at the moment, this one's looking at mean score. So on a scale from 1 to 4, what was the average mean score? And these charts are essentially the same charts that you've just seen on the previous page. So we've got year on year as a total average, and then broken down by whichever of these views you wish. So at the moment, this one's using cohort. And we can select which years are viewable on the charts using this filter there. And then at the bottom, there's one additional chart, which is to show you all of the questions that are applicable to the indicator, so that you can quickly see which are the highest scoring, which were the lowest scoring, etc. Excuse me. Don't normally talk this long. Hence my throat is going. So second question of the day is regarding how we view these charts. So first question is, how would you like question scores displayed? Is it A, as a mean score, as we're showing here, or would a percentage of answers 3 and 4, so percentage of positive responses, be more preferable? Or C, are both useful? To show you that this is basically a duplicate of that page. So here I've selected positive responses. So you can see here we're now looking at a percentage. So this is the percentage of students who have selected a positive answer to this question that was selected. So we can see here that the average here was 43.8% was a positive answer in 2022 for the demo university. So yeah, so this second question is, A, would you prefer the mean score? B, would you prefer the positive responses? Or C, would you prefer both? I should say, I've also, while you're answering that one, is one thing we are looking to do is on these line charts, obviously we have these broken down. This one's by cohort, we could do it by gender, etc. Is we will look to add a university average line. So essentially, if I make this a little bit easier to view, is putting these scores here on this chart, so that you've almost got a baseline, so you can see how PGT or undergraduate first year final stacks up against the university average. I just haven't been able to hook that up because the data needs some restructuring to make that work. But that is something we will look to add. I can see there's a number. All I can see at the moment is there's quite a few numbers in the chat. So assuming that most people have answered that last question, the second question on this is, which one of these two is of greater value to you? So is the mean score of greater value, or is the percentage of positive responses of greater value? The reason I'm asking that is essentially is which one do we show as a default? Or if we are struggling to make the charts flip, like I'm hoping they will, which one do we go for in the first instance? So yeah, which one would you find more valuable, the mean score or the percentage of positive responses? So that's the question analysis page. And if we scroll down to the bottom, again, we have some of this supporting information. So if you clicked any of these, those information would pop up. We've lost the link to the question analysis page because we're on it, but we still have the link to the demographic information. The last area, the last page of analysis really is the non-indicator items. So if I go back to the overview page, you could easily just click non-indicator items in the navigation. I'm just proving that basically on here, if we click non-indicator items, it would take us to the relevant page. So this non-indicator items one, the page is basically, it's exactly the same as the one we've just seen. There was a view that we could try and group the questions into different areas and show them as and show the charts for each area, etc. But we think this is probably the better route to go. So we can see on the question list here, the first sort of, you know, 4 or 5 are academic related. Then there's a few that are related to careers. Then there's a few about, you know, sort of extracurriculum type of activity like voluntary activity. And then the bottom 2 are more overall questions about, you know, evaluating the experience of the institution, and if you would start over, you know, would you go to the same institution? So again, you can select any one you like there, and it's exactly the same level of analysis that you got with the indicator questions for these non-indicator items. So we've got the breakdown of responses. For this one, I've done it by AC unit, so you can see, we can show it, you know, by the different faculties or schools, whatever the structure is. Then we can do it against benchmarks as an overall score. And then we've got it per year and then broken down. Again, I've chosen AC unit on this one. And then we've got all the questions at the bottom. So that's essentially, that is all of the analysis of the indicators and the questions that make up those indicators and the non-indicator items. So all that's left really is the demographic information. So I'll click this link and hope that it works. It does. So the last piece of analysis is demographics information. So what we have here is the ability at the moment to look at the demographic breakdown by an individual indicator, or if we select all, for the institution as a whole. Some of you may have access to the response rate dashboard that we have available within InTouch. That does show responses over the days when the survey's live. And it does show quite a bit of this information already. But what this does is gives you the ability to, again, is to apply all these different filters. So you can see, you know, how it's stacking up for the business school, etc. The filters aren't affecting the data at the moment because I made it work, but that you can see the type of thing you'd be able to do. So again, it's breaking down everything to get to the level that you want to get to. So on the left here, we've got the response rate by year and benchmark. We can compare response rate against benchmarks. We can't really compare response numbers because the benchmark would be a very large number compared to your one institution. But again, we can select which benchmarks we want to see, and we can select which years are viewable on the chart. Then we can see what the population number is, what the number of responses is, and then the response rate. So basically one divided by the other. We can select whether or not we want completers or starters. Completers would probably be the default, and we do need to get a little clever with this because this is fine when we're looking at completers and starters for the institution as a whole. When it comes to looking at an individual indicator, we need to find a way of basically graying this out because that doesn't apply to an individual indicator. An indicator is just looking at students who've answered the questions applicable to that indicator. So yeah, so that filter would be dependent on the indicator that you've selected. So we need to look at a nice way to make that very clear. And then at the bottom here, you've got a similar view to what you've seen on the other pages, where you can select which view you want. So this one's domicile. So it's breaking down your responses by Irish, non-Irish. If we selected non-Irish, then it affects all the other charts accordingly. And again, we could select, we just want to see, the school results of the business school. We just want to see. We just want to see for full-time students, etc., etc. The data is not hooked up, but use your imagination on those. So again, it's minimal charts, but giving you the ability to break down it as you see fit, as you want to find the data that you want to see. So my question on this page is the demographic analysis, is it valued by you at indicator level, or are you only really interested in it at an overall institution level? So basically, A is you value the indicator level of analysis, you think that would be useful, or B, the overall results are absolutely fine. That will help us decide whether or not we do bother showing the breakdown, which would then help us decide what to do with this complete as starters bit of a conundrum. The last page to show you is there's an information page which needs some formatting, but the basic gripes of it is that here is an area that we can put all sorts of different information on. At the moment, it's got some text on there, which you might have spotted earlier when I clicked the little pop-up windows about what do you do with this information. So exploring the data, planning, how you can action the data, and how you can go about sharing the results. But we are thinking about adding more information to this page about how the survey works with links to student survey websites, etc., etc. So there's a lot more we could do with this page, but it's a bit of a work in progress, that one. I think the only other thing to mention is that I put these two little symbols in the top, so there will be the ability to, click a home button and go back to the overview page, or if you're in a non-overview page, you've got the ability for a back button to take to the previous page that you were currently in. And lastly, just a little bit about Power BI. Because this is Microsoft product, Power BI, you have got the ability to export into PowerPoint, into PDF. I'd have to work out what it does in Excel, to be completely honest with you. But because it's a Microsoft product, it should hook up pretty nicely. And in PowerPoint, you can embed this as an image or as a live data. So there's lots more options for you than was previously available via our current offering, which is in Tableau. And I think that's about it for me in terms of a demonstration of what we've currently got. Yeah, do we have any specific questions, etc.? I've not looked at the chat yet myself.
Hi, David. Yeah, we have a couple, all right. So if anybody has any more or any feedback or comments on the dashboards, have we gone through them? We can go back to any one of them and have a look again. We have one just here from Anna Marie. Is the dashboard plan for the PGR survey as well? So will we be getting this kind of level of dashboards for that PGR survey?
Yeah, we will. We've not started looking at it yet. Probably be a job for next year. But yes, we will absolutely look to provide a very similar looking thing for the PGR. Obviously, it's a different, setup of questions, etc. So we might have to change it a bit. But the basic premise, I would hope, be the same.
Yeah. We have a question here as well. I want to know if a school can select all of their undergraduate or postgraduate programs in one view. So there's a multi-select, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. So say you want to, it's big biotechnology, for instance, then yeah, all of the filters are applicable to that school. So I mean, I'm guessing that those are the only two that are showing in my data for biotechnology. But yes, you select your school, you'll select your faculty, whichever the structure is, and all these filters are applicable to what you've selected.
Very good. And are the graphs downloadable or into Excel or copy and paste into a Word document, that type of thing?
Yes, I believe, and I'll be honest, we're relatively early on in our journey with Power BI ourselves. But you can copy the image. You can also go focus mode, so you can make it nice and big on your screen. So I mean, you could just screenshot if you wish. But as I said, you can export it into PowerPoint, but that will take the entire screen as an image. I think the easiest way is copy image with caption, and then you can paste that into whatever you like, essentially.
And when you do you know, David, when you download a PDF or that type of thing, do the headings and the context remain associated with the graphs?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
so whatever filters you've applied, it will copy what you've got at that moment.
And is it downloadable into Excel? I presume if you can.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've not actually done it.
No.
Yeah, it says analyze in Excel. Why not? Let's give it a go. It's the first time I've pressed this button. But you would hope, being a Microsoft product,
Yes.
that it would be available. Be careful. I'm gonna have to say that this is a shell. As I said, it's a shell of a report. So.
Your pivot.
Wow. Okay. Right. It's basically giving you the it's basically giving you all the data and the ability to run that data in any which way you like. So that's access to all of the data. So you can do your own analysis. Essentially, that's what that's doing.
We might have to consider that, David. Is it giving the access to the whole suite of all institutions across the whole thing?
Yeah,
or just
absolutely. There's what we call row level security. Okay. So that is, it's part of our process when we're designing this to ensure that you can't see everybody else's reports, etc.
And then we just with one comment there on that last dashboard about the starters and completers, if we could have a pop-up just to explain what that means to people, maybe just for those people who don't, or maybe put it in the glossary, maybe, or
yeah, no, good idea.
Definition, yeah.
Yeah, so sort of sometimes take for granted that we know all these terms.
Yes.
Yeah, making a note of that one. That's a good one.
Right. Do we have any other questions? And I'll give people a couple of minutes to put a few more questions over there, or if they want to unmute themselves, feel free to. But just in relation to the questions we pose, so for the first question, should we display the average scores of the in columns or lines? Lines where the outright winner, or sorry, columns where they're 70% to 30% of the responses were favouring the columns. So that gives us some feedback on that one. For the second question then, do we like the mean scores or do we like the percentages, or do you want both? Guess what? The majority of people want both. But when forced into choosing in our third question, do we want which did the value more, the mean scores or the percent positives? It was mostly 8 of the responses out of the 9 were looking at the percent positive. So people preferred the percent positives. There was 1 that preferred the mean scores. So if we had to make the decisions, that it looks like the percent was positive. And then our final question about the demographic analysis, we got a total split decision, even numbers saying that the value, the indicator level, and the same number saying that the overall results, and then 1 person said both. So it's a very, very split decision on that one. If anybody else has a strong opinion that didn't vote, we're definitely, it's a difficult decision to make about that one.
Yeah. I think therefore we'll have to go with show it at indicator level as well, but make sure we make it nice and clear. And we've also got some work to do to make sure that the numbers are correct, because the issue we have at the moment is if we just the way the data is normally structured, if you just select all, then all it will do is sum up the total of each individual indicator, which wouldn't actually give you the same numbers as the total institution responses. But it's fine. That's for us to work out how to fix that. So we will, and make that completer status clearer. So that's okay.
Yeah, and if we look at, if you wouldn't mind flicking back to one of the indicator analysis, just about the, there's a query here. Do you know, if we focus on the percent positive, do we see the percent negative at all, or where is that captured? The data.
Yeah,
in that top one, isn't it?
So if we're thinking about, so here we have percentage of positive responses. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
So essentially it's the rest of this, what's missing.
Yeah.
So, you know, if it's 41%, then the missing 59% is negative responses.
Yes. Is the bar chart above that? Does that show the 4 different categories at an overall level?
It does. So that's a different way of viewing it. So, I mean, you know, those 2 combined, so that's very much in quite a bit. So they're your positives.
Yes.
Some are very little, there's your negatives. So there is a way of viewing that, absolutely. Don't like it when it's one chart. So yeah, that information is there. This one does it over time. This one is just for the individual year. So if you really wanted to focus on the negatives rather than the positives, then you could just go and look at, you know, for a given year, and you could change the year that you're looking at here, you know, to give you that. So the information is there, I suppose.
Does anybody want to comment on any of those charts at all, or happy to take them through chat, or if you want to speak, please do. Siobhan, can you see any hands up or anything? No.
Say that I think it looks very good. I mean, it's easier to follow them from my perspective, definitely, than the prior one. Yes. And I like, you know, just again, you've kept all the selection filters and everything there. So, and they're kind of well within screen view. So when you're working with it, it's good.
Thanks.
Yeah, because that's one of the, I think that was one of the things that came through on the specification. Actually, there was some feedback that because you can add filters in this pane, it becomes a little messy, because you get certain visualizations, is what they call the charts, etc., can have different filters applied to them. So I think it's cleaner, and also because it's the same on every page, I think it's easier to use with this view. So yeah, I'm a fan of it as well. It's not my design, so I'm not taking credit for that. But yeah, I hope it does prove useful.
Very good. And just we didn't set this out at the beginning, but how do people get access to it, and who has access automatically?
So it'd be exactly the same as the current access right. So Tribal iGraduate have an application called InTouch up here. So you need a username and log on, username and password to be able to log into that application online. And then we can set, iGraduate can set the levels of permissions for individual users as to whether or not you can see these reports. So, but it'll be monitored, it'll be controlled exactly the same way that it has been historically on that one.
And Siobhan, do you need to, is the gatekeeper thing part of the access rights?
Thanks, Maria. I do anticipate that we will keep that because that's been working quite well for the past 2 years or so. So it would still be a case that there would be nominated people within the institution who can very easily and quickly give access to others, which is and maybe in case everybody isn't familiar with the gatekeeper, what had been previously in place was that it always had to be the registrar or one specific nominee of the registrar who was able to grant access to the InTouch or to give permission to iGraduate to create additional accounts, whereas by having the gatekeeper, it means that there can be multiple people within the institution beyond the registrar who can accept requests for access to InTouch and grant those really quickly. So yeah, I think given the success of that over the past 2 years, we would be looking to keep that with the new look InTouch.
Okay. I think I've captured everybody's questions, and if there's anything else, I'll give it a minute, but I think I have everybody caught. Just have a quick scan. All right, I think that is it. So thank you, David, and thanks to everybody for your feedback. I think we can wrap it up there if nobody else has any feedback. Are you willing to take feedback later on, Siobhan, if anybody thinks of anything that they didn't get a chance to do?
We can do, I'll send out an email after this and just to mention that, but the timeline for that is quite short. So if anybody does have anything else that you want to add, we'd really have to have it within the next we're looking at 2 days kind of timeline, because David and his team need to get cracking on this.
I should have asked you that before we started.
About 4 weeks ago, I think, is when we were, David and his team were hoping to get cracking on this. So they've been very accommodating in giving us time to kind of consider this and to get feedback. So yeah, I think I'd be saying close of business on lunchtime Thursday, I think, is probably as far as we can push it. But I'll send an email shortly just to mention that. And particularly if there are colleagues within your institutions that you want to mention any of the elements to, or pass on the questions or consider any matters with and get back to us. We'd be more than happy to have that feedback, but yeah, within 48 hours.
There's a few things coming through the chat here, so people seem quite impressed by it, and they're saying it looks great. So, and it does look great. I think so as well. So thanks again, everybody, and thanks everybody for your time and your feedback. We'll appreciate that and get David cracking on things. All right, thank you.